my goal here today is to show you some tools and techniques for rapidly, and rapidly is a key word here, rapidly building and deploying customer-focused predictive models. I'm mainly going to do this through a live demonstration using real data, and of course that's always more exciting than a bunch of PowerPoints. So most of our time will be spent there, but of course, I do need to take a few minutes to set things up and walk through a little bit of slides here, and we'll take a few polls along the way as well. So first, a quick background on Lityx as a company. We're a technology and consulting company firmly focused on enabling our clients to do what I'll call advanced analytics or high-powered analytics, so things like predictive modeling and marketing optimization. And our main business area of focus is on the marketing domain, so customer and marketing, CRM, and analytics. Our clients really span quite a few industries, a number of industries and different sizes, and I'm happy to say that a number of our clients on the list here have been joint with Revolution, which really speaks to the strength of our partnership. Very good, thanks. Okay, so let me start with a quick introduction to kind of get into the meat of the presentation here. Probably actually a review for many of you, but these are the kind of things that we're talking about when we say, use a phrase like customer behavior modeling. So, we here at Lityx and Revolution, and like many of you out there, look at the customer relationship as really a dynamic cycle. It's kind of a constant tug of war between the organization and its customers. And so, for example, in the acquisition stage, we're often building models to predict things like who may be profitable if we were to acquire them, or maybe who's most likely to respond to an upcoming direct mail campaign, acquisition campaign that we have. In the growth stage, we're really trying to solidify and expand on the current customer relationships we have. So, here it might tend to, look for the best opportunities to sell additional products or services, so-called cross-sell models, or maybe to try and increase customer loyalty to us. At the same time, we're looking to retain as many of the good customers that we have as possible. So, we're identifying future retention issues with things like churn models, which will be the focus of a demonstration that we get to later. Or, worst case scenario, we might be looking to win back lapsed customers or lost customers and maybe implement something like the win-back model. And you layer on top of that the fact that, the models themselves are only a part of the analytics solution because then the marketer has to decide a lot of other things. So in other words, what's the best strategy for communicating with each individual? What channels, what offers, what message, and all of that with the limited budget and limited resources. So based on what I just walked through in terms of the customer life cycle, clearly marketers have a lot to worry about. They have data and customer relationships and budgets and so on and so on. So putting a complex layer of technology on top of all of this is pretty daunting. And to this point, actually, kind of an external point of view here, Forrester themselves have recently said that technology and the predictive analytics vendors out there need to recognize this issue and provide, might call it easier to use tools with more of a business user focus. And we definitely agree with that. In fact, that's really the key focus of our analytics platform that we'll be talking about here in a few minutes. But at the same time, I would also say there's no reason why we can't take that opportunity to also focus on the data scientists' needs. They need to be more efficient as well. So we can kind of accomplish both things, in one fell swoop here. So as a quick comparison, I look at the classic approach to modeling is very manual, very coding intensive, very labor intensive. And by the way, I can talk about these things. As David mentioned, I have a very kind of technical background as well, and I've been in the weeds for 20 plus years working with clients doing these kind of things. So lots of code is written, it's tested, and it's debugged, and it's iterated through many times, and you're testing out new data cleaning or different algorithmic approaches. And even on the back end at implementation time, it often requires recoding model output maybe into a different environment. And so there's more testing and more debugging. And the approach then that our platform Lityx IQ takes, and what we're going to be kind of focusing a bit here today, is that much of that iterative manual process can really be made much more automated and intelligent. So the interface into the models can be focused on the business language, but at the same time provide all the options that an advanced user can cares about and can take advantage of. Much of the iterative testing and running that can be done through manual back-end processing, supported in our platform, as I mentioned before, through connectivity to Revolution Enterprise. On the results side of things, from my point of view, there doesn't need to be any reason to code up performance metrics and write the code behind lift charts. Let's just pre-compute all the relevant ones and make them easily available for comparison to either a data scientist or a business user. And then when we're ready to implement, in other words, from a modeler's perspective, score the model, then let's keep it easy, consistent, and without kind of adding another layer of coding on top. So that's really the overview to the approach we're going to take. And it certainly appears to be, as a lot of the words that I'm using here, kind of geared towards ease of use versus sort of a hardcore data scientist. And so, what about us? What about people like myself? I am a data scientist. I'm a geeky statistician, data scientist at heart, doing this kind of stuff for a long time. So I personally could be annoyed at this new approach, but here's what I say about that. We can better use our skills, and now I'm talking about myself, a data scientist, better use our skills and training on higher value parts of the solution. So let's focus on things like data and data design, data collection, the analytics and the modeling strategies that we can give to marketers, and proving the value of advanced analytics to the overall business, so building business cases for analytics. I kind of say we're selling ourselves short to spend 80% of our time hacking out code and cutting and pasting and debugging, those sorts of things. And that said, most of us would say that we're happy to do those things. We've been doing that for a long time, and it's if we're able to still be powerful and flexible and get strong models, if that were the only way to do it, to hack out code, that'd be great. But it doesn't have to be the only way to get great models. So we're going to jump into the demo here in just 1 second. What you're going to see is a cloud-based hosted platform for advanced analytics called Lityx IQ. There are 4 integrated solutions for managing data, developing insights, and doing things like predictive modeling and marketing optimization. What we're going to focus on here today is the Predict IQ solution within the platform. And of course, as mentioned before, it's powered in part by Revolution Analytics Enterprise. So the demonstration I'm going to walk you through, this is a quick background, is going to be kind of focused on the retail industry. It'll be a churn oriented problem, and specifically in the apparel industry. So let me take just 2 seconds here to share my browser window with the audience. And if all went well, you will now see a Firefox browser, and I'm in the Lityx IQ platform. And first thing I wanted to do here, and again, the focus of today's conversation is not on all the data management aspects, much more on the kind of efficient use of tools like Predict IQ to do predictive modeling. But at the very least, I do want to orient you a little bit to the data set that we have here. So again, it's retail industry, apparel specifically. And the data set that we have access to and that we'll use for modeling is customer level data. And we have quite a few pieces of information in here. So the kinds of things in here would be demographics and geodemographics. We have a lot of transactional information about the kinds of brands and dollars spent on different brands for each individual. Demographics such as their gender, recency kind of metrics, so last, second to last purchase dates and days since purchase, and those sorts of pieces of information, all aggregated, of course, from raw source systems. And in particular, the very last field, as I scroll to the right here, is a field called lapse flag. And I can kind of use that as a backdrop to what we're going to walk through on the modeling side. So it is a churn model. And the way that we've defined lapse with this client data, so we define a person as having lapsed if they haven't spent they haven't shopped with us, spent any money, or purchased any items in the last 150 days. Okay, so those people are flagged in here as the 1, and if they have purchased more recently than that, they're 0. And of course, it's a historical data set, and what we're looking to do here is build a model that tries to tie together, correlate that lapse or non-lapse action, that customer behavior of not purchasing anymore, with some of the information we have about that customer. Again, purchase history, transactional history, demographics, geodemographics, and so on. So with that backdrop, again, I'm going to jump into our Predict IQ part of the platform and spend most, if not all, the rest of our time here. I want to orient you, a little bit to the modeling life cycle and how models are built and tested and validated and reviewed here. But actually, first thing I want to do before even getting there is, and by the way, I'll back up 1 second. As I walk through this, I'm going to kind of do it with 2 points of view in mind, and kind of following up on the theme of the PowerPoint part of the webinar here. We talked about two ways to look at things. One is from the business perspective, the marketing person's perspective, that business user way of viewing building models and doing analytics. And the second is more the data scientist view of things, the techie, the modeler, the statistician. And I'm going to kind of play the role of both people as we go through here, and you can kind of see where both can benefit from a platform like this. So first, creating a new model here, if we were to start from scratch, building a model here in the Lityx IQ platform, the way we really think about it is coming at it from the business perspective, the business language perspective. So, a marketer is more likely to know whether they need a churn model or a response model or customer value model to support some upcoming programs that they have, versus thinking about it from the algorithmic perspective. A data scientist comes at it from the perspective of, I need to build a logistic regression model or a neural network. I like to look at shade. But the marketer is kind of coming at it from a different point of view. And so creating a new model in the platform has really got that business language behind it. But again, doesn't leave the data scientist out of things, doesn't leave the geek like myself unable to do anything interesting. We'll show that here in a second. So with that in mind, in the platform here, it becomes very easy to organize 1, 2, or dozens of models. So I can organize them into model libraries, and maybe have a different library for different kinds of models, like churn models and value models, and maybe probability models. And in particular, I'm going to focus on, in this particular library, we have 2 models currently there. And I'm going to click on this one that's called Predict 150-Day Lapse, and use that pre-created model as a backdrop for walking you through the process here. And really, again, we try and walk the user through the process in the typical model building cycle. And so, first thing that we'll often need to do is set up the model. What are the settings and options and other things that define how this thing's going to run? And that's what I'll click here in a second, and I'll kind of walk through how that looks in Lityx IQ to make things easier. Second thing, of course, is we need to run the model. Then we want to look at how it went, what are some of the performance metrics and performance analysis that comes out of running that model. And then we start moving towards the implementation stage. It may need to go through an approval process and a final implementation process. So before I get there, let me come back and let's look at how models are kind of defined here in the platform. Again, 2 different perspectives. First perspective is the business user, the non-technical person, who wants to build a model to support some upcoming marketing program, but they don't have the technical skills and background, and we're trying to make it very quick and easy for them to build very good, accurate models. And from that person's perspective, there's only a few things that need to be done, and this first tab here is really all they need to pay attention to. Certainly pick a data set that they have access to here in the platform, and so what's selected here is the one that we were looking at back in the data manager, so the summary data view of our customers. Find a field that's in that data set that represents, in this case, the churn behavior that we're looking to model, and in this data set, it's called lapse flag. I only see here fields that make sense to be used in the churn model. So, for example, binary fields. And last real thing then is of all the other variables in my data set, excuse me here, let me select the ones that I want to use as potential predictors in the model. And again, there isn't really a limit here. There's a lot of intelligence behind the scenes. So again, as a marketer, I can say, let's pick a wide set of variables and let the platform determine which ones have the high correlation or predictive of this lapse that we're trying to predict. So it's really a selection of the candidate predictive variables, and the platform has the intelligence in the back end to do simple things like removing fields that are just unique identifiers, or if I accidentally pick the dependent variable field itself, it removes that, but also goes a lot further, of course, in doing intelligent variable selection. So again, from the marketer's standpoint, from the business person's standpoint, that's all they really need to do. All the other settings and parameters and options are set to very intelligent default values, and you can get very, very good, strong models, even with just doing that. But now I'm going to put on my geek hat, my data scientist hat, and say, what else is it there to play with if I want to kind of fine tune a number of things and get a little more technical. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on all these, but just kind of show you how we can mix, the business user view of things with the data scientist view of things. So you can play around with different sampling approaches for data that's used from the original data set to build the model. We can change the default way that the model was validated from a default HALVAL to any other approach that we might want to take, like cross validation or backtest. Again, this is something that a marketer or business person might not even know that this is something that should happen, but in the platform it happens automatically. But the advanced user can come in here and specify different details behind how the sample validation occurs. Very interestingly, for the data scientist, on the algorithms and settings tab, I can essentially here set up a bake-off that compares and runs 1, 2, 3, or dozens of algorithms, and runs them all through and compares them to each other and spits out all the kind of bake-off performance comparisons on the backside. So in this case, I have 2 algorithms on the list. It's going to run both a logistic regression and a shade. And I can, of course, go in here and play around with some more detailed settings behind those things. And I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the intelligence that's in the platform that even a business person, but even data scientists would be very happy about in terms of the efficiency of the way they usually work. And that is certain aspects of creating data and cleaning data and preparing data for modeling is very iterative, and it has to do with what's the right way to bin categorical fields, or should I normalize numeric fields, or how do I handle missing values and things like that. And again, the platform here is taking the approach that we can be very intelligent, include intelligent processing on the back end. On the front end, let's just allow the user to say, yeah, let's go ahead and try binning categorical predictors and do it in the most intelligent way. Or maybe I don't want to bin them. Or maybe I wanted to do both and try them both out, both ways, and see which one works best, kind of give me all the metrics on the back end for both possibilities. So a lot of that intelligence behind the data prep and setup is also kind of built in here. So that 80% of time that we usually spend on data prep and binning and normalization, cleaning up missing values, all, a good chunk of that is handled here in a very intelligent way. Of course, many advanced settings, p-values, and thresholds are available to the user as well. As I said, what we can do here in sort of very easy point-and-click bake-off fashion is I can add any number of algorithms to this list. So if I care about these things, I can, let's throw in a neural network or naive Bayes or support vector machine, the kind of algorithms that make sense for this kind of model are listed here. And in fact, I can add the same algorithm multiple times if I want to try it with different settings and different parameters and different options. So I can create, and we and our clients have created bake-offs with dozens of, we call them iterations along the way. So let me move forward here. Filtering, very easy to handle if you want to build a model subset, can handle missing values with a number of options, and we can also handle how the iterations and the algorithms are processed and what the user gets back. from that. In particular, I have it set for this model as build all models for review. And so what that's going to do is all the algorithms, this big bake-off that in this case, a small bake-off, the bake-off that I set up, will churn through all the performance metrics, all the holdout sample performance metrics for those algorithms, but also spit back to me more details from those final model builds. So what are the, give me the logistic regression coefficients, give me the resulting tree. So with that in mind, the next step, of course, so again, we're kind of simulating the process of walking through a model build. Next step might be that we're going to execute the model, and what I'll actually do is kind of execute this in real time. And while we're talking a bit more, I'll kind of open the console window down here, and we'll see that model progress through as we talk. One of the things I wanted to introduce you to, and again, tying into this idea that we really want to make things as kind of easy and simple as possible and as intelligent and automated as possible to build models and implement models. And so one of the options that we have access to here in the platform for building and executing models is to put them on a schedule. And not just sort of the usual date-based schedule, run it Saturday overnight, but we can put models and almost everything in the platform on the schedule called upon data refresh. And one of the very intensive and difficult, complex tasks I've dealt with my clients over the years is when they want to refresh a model, it's never as easy as it seems, because the last time the model was built might have been a year ago, and that person's gone, and all the documentation is sitting in a drawer somewhere, and we don't know where they got the data from and how they define the SQL queries, et cetera, et cetera. So we try to make that refresh process very easy here, and what we can do is say upon data refresh, and what that will do is once the data that is behind the model changes, okay, we look at the data source and see if there's an update or a refresh of that data. Once it changes, it kicks off kind of automatically a new run of that model. I can get a notification when that happens, when it finishes, and come in and review the results manually if I want to. So we can see the model is chugging along down here, and while that's happening, I'm going to kind of move through the next stage of our modeling process, and that is the evaluation stage. So model has been defined, it's been executed, and by the way, you notice that there's also sort of a complete model management component here. Every time I build and refresh a new version of the model, it tracks those versions over time, and I can always go backwards in time to look at results from prior runs of the model. So none of that stuff is lost. The complete history of everything we've done from model building and results perspective is stored and always available to us. What I was saying in the PowerPoint section about looking at results and analysis, it should be so much easier. I shouldn't need to code anything up. I should get quick analysis of performance metrics, and again, we can do that here in the platform very easily. So, for example, if I want to maybe take a look at a number of lift metrics that result from this model build, I come down here and pick those metrics from the list, and you remember we have two iterations of two algorithms that are being compared here. And so I get a kind of quick chart, no coding, no programming involved, and but a very nice and easy to understand comparison in terms of these lift metrics of these two iterations of algorithms that we ran. Of course, everything, if I wish, can be exported back to my machine in terms of these charts and tables to put into a PowerPoint, share to my boss, or share to my client. Things like lift charts, as I mentioned, very easy. So a more detailed lift chart, select lift from the drop down there, and I get a nice lift chart comparison of my two algorithms. Certainly looks like that second one, the shade, is looking a little bit better than my logistic regression just in terms of overall lift across all deciles. All of this is also downloadable, and can get quite a bit more detail by looking at it in tabular form at the level of percentiles as opposed to just deciles. And in addition to that, again, moving on to more of the data scientist view of things, if we were interested in coefficients behind regression style models, or what kind of binning was done behind the scenes, or the tree itself, if I had run some tree models, I can get access to all of that here as well. So again, moving along the process here, we've built a model, we defined a model, built a model, and by the way, you can see in the meantime that last refresh has completed behind the scenes here. Next stage might be a prep for implementing the model. And again, this is often a tug of war and a little bit of a complex iterative task in the classic world. What we're doing here is allowing folks off of an approval process. And now this is just a demo model, demo environment, so there are no approvers, but we can set up others who we may want, like our boss or a client, to approve a model before it's implemented. And when we are ready to implement, we can come in here and pick which version, which iteration of the model we want to implement, and implement meaning put into production or allow scoring jobs to run off of. Request approval for that, and then anyone who's set up to approve the model would get an email and come in here and physically review and approve it before it can go into production. So at this point in time, we are at development version 2.8 of our LAPS model. The production version is 2.5.2, so the second iteration of version 2.5 of the model. And question would be, all right, how do we score the model? Score the next last process was that the actual implementation, and the idea of making that easier too, and not requiring a recode or exporting things out to other systems. So again, the idea here is to make that as easy as possible. And in our world within the Lityx IQ platform, we call that a scoring job. And I can define, create scoring jobs that are associated with any model that I have in production system. And again, it's a very easy process. The scoring job is defined simply by picking which model I am looking to score, telling what data set I want to run through that model. And these are the data sets that I, as a user, have access in the platform. Scores are stored in what we call scoring catalogs. They're really just big data sets that are keyed by something like a customer ID, whatever the user chooses. And then stored in that catalog are the scores from any number of models associated at the customer level. So I can have in the same catalog churn model scores and cross-sell scores and affinity scores and response model scores all together in one place. And they're also version controlled as well. So when I rescore a model, it doesn't necessarily overwrite prior scores of that model. It just appends to the scoring catalog. So I can always look back and see how an individual score or decile is progressing over time. So I can assign as well deciles, percentiles, quintiles, whatever I want to that score. So that is the very simple process of setting up a scoring job. There's nothing more to it really other than to come here and run it. So I will also run this as we watch here in real time. Notice I will say, just for the sake of being clear here, that for the sake of this demonstration, the data that I run through the scoring job is the same data set that was partially used to build the model. So it's not sort of a pure example of a production environment, but still worthy of discussion. So as that runs through, I'll also mention a scoring job can be put on that same kind of upon data refresh schedule. And maybe this is even more important or interesting than saying a model can be put on that schedule, because the scoring job might be something that you're rerunning, maybe refreshing customer data, behavioral data every week or every month, or maybe it's every day, every night. And by putting it on that schedule, you can set things up to automatically find and see that you have fresh customer data or new prospect data, run that scoring job, and then spit the new results back into the scoring catalog. And that catalog itself can be set up to automatically export out to an external system. So it could be an FTP site or some other place where your marketing or CRM systems can pick up those scores and append them into your campaign analysis. Okay, so the scoring job is complete. If I want to kind of manually look at the scores and come over here into my scoring catalogs, the catalog we were using here was called customer level model scores. So I can come in here, and again, this is sort of a more manual way to just review how things went and make sure they worked well. I can, in my catalog right now, I have a couple of different models scores stored in here. So I have a 12-month value model as well as a 150-day lapse model. Scores from those models are stored in the catalog. So let me pick this one that we just looked at. And of course, as I said, all versions of the scores from those models are stored over time. So let me pick this version that we just ran here, and I can come in here and I see it's keyed in this case by what's called consumer ID, and I can easily sort by score or by decile if I want to, and export, again, in more manual fashion, export this. It's a smaller data set out to Excel, out to a CSV file. But in a more automated fashion, as I said, the scoring catalog is really just another data set that sits back in the data manager here in Lityx IQ, and I can set that up for automatic export once it changes. And so that kind of completes the automatic cycle here of bringing data automatically into the scoring process. Job runs automatically. Results go into a catalog, and that catalog is exported once it's complete. So what I've hoped I've shown you here is a kind of a complete process focused on modeling that has a little bit of a, being geared towards the business user and kind of ease of use and, lack of coding, point-and-click interface, but also has a lot of those nice little tools and things that the data scientists like myself can play around with. So with that, I'm going to come back into the PowerPoint. Okay, so last slide here, and then we're going to turn it over to Q&A, is I want to come back to another case study as well. So the demo, again, meant to kind of walk you through an actual process of using a platform like this to build models and build them very quickly, and not only build, but test and validate and implement. And we did all that in 15, 20 minutes or so. I wanted to expand that idea and kind of walk you quickly through a case study of a client of ours who's a large nonprofit organization who had a series of affinity models. You might also think of them as cross-sell models, and series meaning a couple dozen, eventually expanding into over 3 dozen of these models. And what we were able to do and help, you can imagine that's a big onerous process if you're to think about things in the classic approach, right? All those models kind of going through the data and the algorithm selection, the testing, comparison, variable selection, and implementation. The whole process can be very onerous for one model or 2 models, much less 24 to 40 models. And so we kind of helped them bring that process into Lityx IQ, and we're able to kind of bring that cycle down from multiple months, 3 or 4 months, to a couple of weeks. And the really kind of important thing, and I didn't really say this before, only alluded to it, is if what we lost from being more efficient and being able to get our models to market faster and more quickly is that the models weren't as good, then we could talk about the trade-offs, right? Are we willing to lose model accuracy to be able to get a model out, a week or maybe a month faster? The nice thing is about all the tests that we've done with our platform here, including this being an example of that, we don't lose that. The intelligence that's built into the platform kind of goes right alongside of the efficiency that we gain in going through that modeling process. And in fact, in this case, we measured very specifically that the models built very quickly in Lityx IQ were 5% better than the ones that took 3 to 4 months through manual effort. So eventually that was expanded to a series of 40 models and all built and run and managed within the Lityx IQ platform. So as a kind of quick ending here, information for contacting us is on your screen there, myself, as well as our Director of Sales, Art Warren. Our email addresses are there. And also wanted to note that we have a virtual course that will be leading along with Revolution coming up called Customer Analytics for Marketers towards the end of April. Will be over 4 half-day sessions. So it's essentially a 2-day course spread over 4 half-day sessions. And you can see registration link and a coupon code for those who are in the webinar to take advantage of that.